I'm Sevil Mikhailova.
And I'm Claude Salhani, and this is This Week in Focus. This week we look at the Asian Development Bank, and we have the director of the bank, director of the finance department.
I'm the director for Central and West Asia.
Thank you for correcting me. Betty Wilkinson, who just arrived here this week. So we're extremely lucky to have her tell us. We have a lot of questions for you, and so welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to our show. And currently there is an instability in the financial market throughout the world. So what are your bank's response, the ADB's particular response to such a situation in the world market?
So the Asian Development Bank is a very strong financial institution, and we are a development finance organization, as shown by our AAA rating. And recently, we had our annual meetings in Baku. And during that time, a decision was made by the members to augment our capital, which significantly will increase our capacity to provide loans and grants throughout the region.
And what about particularly Azerbaijan? So what about your bank's participation in the private sector of Azerbaijan, the private banking sector, let's say?
Well, firstly, in the public sector, throughout our history, we've provided over $1.9 billion in lending to the country. In the private sector, since our startups, we have had 7 projects for about $163 million to the private sector. Direct loans, equity, guarantees, B-loans, and capital contributions. In addition, we do a lot of work in trade finance with 2 banks here. In the last couple of years, we've done a lot of trade financing activity. And recently, we've provided assistance in the form of loans to 2 of your banks, to Demir Bank and to Access Bank. We're also looking at another financial institution for some lending in that area. We are also looking at other areas. In particular, we are looking at Lukoil as a potential project partner, and we are looking at other organizations as well.
But this is a quite long period of cooperation between Azerbaijan and the Asian Development Bank. So how do you see the perspectives, or are you satisfied with the level of cooperation with Azerbaijan?
Very satisfied. And as with every organization, we're always looking to expand it.
Okay.
Do you cooperate with the World Bank? Do you have any dealings with them? Are you part of the greater World Bank family, or are you totally independent?
It's a good question. The World Bank does manage the world. We are Asia. We focus in on Asia, and these are our important clients in Asia and the Pacific.
But you have a relationship with the World Bank?
Of course. The World Bank does lending and knowledge products as well. We collaborate with them very frequently. In some places, they may decide that they want to work with the government in a certain area, like in health, and we may say, well, we're involved in infrastructure and education. We may work on those areas. So we collaborate sometimes within a sector and often between them.
And my next question, again, about the Azerbaijani banking system and your bank's contribution to its development. So your bank just recently announced that you are going to issue bonds in Azerbaijani manat. Could you update us about this information?
Sure. It's an important area for us. We really appreciate the opportunity to issue local currency bonds. In Azerbaijan, we are in the early stage of discussions on local currency bond issuance. But in Georgia, we recently issued a local currency bond for 100 million lari, which was used to support TBC Bank in their SME, small and micro enterprise and medium enterprise lending program, which they're expanding in their country.
Betty, the manat recently lost some of its power to the dollar. To what do you attribute that?
We've been looking a lot at that in the region. The region is facing 2 challenges. The circumstances in Russia, which have certainly affected the region, and the significant decline in the oil pricing. Different countries are handling that in different ways. Many of them have had to devalue. It made sense in their economies. For example, in Kazakhstan, they have also devalued significantly. And there are a number of other smaller countries that are not oil producers that have also devalued because of the effects of these 2 significant changes in the environment.
Should we expect more devaluation coming?
I can't answer that. It much depends on every country's circumstance, whether the first devaluation was significant, what's happening in the economy as it adjusts, the budget circumstances.
But we also heard a number of statements from the international financial institutions who urged and said that they will change their policy after the sanctions, Western sanctions on Russia. So what about your bank? So do you plan to change your policies, particularly in this region?
I would argue that the policies depend on the circumstances of their engagement with Russia. For example, in the World Bank, there was still a lending program in operation, which is now in abeyance. And same story with EBRD. Russia is not a member of the Asian Development Bank, so we wouldn't have any changes in that kind of lending structure. With regard to our countries, we always stand ready to participate with them and to engage with them in lending and also in knowledge products.
Do you plan to increase your capital in Azerbaijan?
Certainly, we don't have a capital investment here. Our capital is, because we are an international financial institution, our capital is based at our headquarters. But if you're asking, are we going to invest in equity in the country? The plan is to do a lot of lending in the private sector and then to see how the needs emerge.
Russia occupies a large bit of real estate in Asia. Why are they not part of the ADB?
The process of membership requires an application. I'm not aware if Russia has ever applied. Following an application, they would then solicit support from the existing members. I'm also not aware of that status.
You know, the current situation in the fiscal market is quite complicated, and we should say. So what can be your recommendation to your member banks, and indeed, in our case, to Azerbaijan?
To our member countries, our suggestions have been quite similar throughout, and that is if the government makes a determination that it's going to adjust very sharply and rapidly to the change and believe that it's going to be a medium-term change, we support that with information, with the capability, and if the government wishes, with lending. What we notice in Azerbaijan is the government has decided to take the hard hit now. We respect that. It's a good decision for the country. In other countries like Kazakhstan, they've decided, well, we're going to cut the budget, but we're also going to spend a fair amount of money to protect the growth, particularly protecting social sector expenditure and small and micro enterprise business development. And for that country, they will be asking to borrow from us for that purpose.
And what about your social projects in Azerbaijan? So do you plan to expand them as well?
One of the things that happens is that we work closely with the countries on what the government wants. So if the government here has said our investments with ADB should probably be infrastructure, then that's what we do. So we have significant investments in energy development, in urban development, particularly water and sanitation, and in roads. If the government came to us and said, yeah, we think it might be time to work in education too, we would say yes.
And my question now, so have you received from the government any proposal concerning these projects?
Concerning projects. We actually have a country program strategy, which is in the public domain. And it provides all the information of our planned projects. Every year we update this with a country operational business plan, which is also in the public domain, and shows exactly what projects the government has requested that we've agreed upon.
How do you follow up on the government saying they want money for a certain project? How do you know it's going to that project and not something else? Are there mechanisms in place to...
There's very good mechanisms. Thanks for the question. We have a system of agreeing on how much will be spent on what. Right. We only release funds when we've seen proof that the expenditures are done properly, and we require a project audit to be done every year.
And you're a banking specialist. You are an ADB director in charge of finance. So what can you tell us about the future of the market?
The future of the market. I've actually spoken on Azerbaijan's financial market before. It's strongly banked. You have 95% of your assets in banking. You have a lot of banks. For an economy this size, probably too many. One of the questions that has been asked is what's happening with the equity of these banks due to the devaluation. Well, we would anticipate in an environment like this, owners are offering to provide more capital, or they're talking about merging with other banks. I would like to see expansion of the very successful microfinance market. I think there's some real options there, but there's some legal impediments which could be addressed and help that market grow, especially since it helps people in rural areas and people who have smaller businesses. We're also looking at what's going to happen with leasing, what's going to happen with insurance market, what's going to happen with other types of credit markets, because that's important here.
The insurance market is growing in Azerbaijan, would you?
It is, slowly, very slowly.
How do we speed it up?
It's interesting how different countries have done that. Some have said certain kinds of insurance is going to be mandatory. That helps. Car insurance, which has been done here. Credit life insurance can also be done here. There can also be discussion about the balancing between public expenditure in health and private expenditure through insurance in health.
And an interesting question will be about Azerbaijani manat. So Azerbaijan is an oil-producing country whose income is mostly dependent on oil incomes, oil revenues. And taking into consideration the current situation in oil markets, the slowdown in the oil market, and the slowdown in country's income. So how do you think the future of Azerbaijani manat? So will it go down in future, or your recommendations in this regard?
I think that, look, the country's strong. I think that this is a smart set of managers who are saying we need to diversify the economy. It's crucial. We're trying to pay attention to improving the quality of our human resources, which is also crucial. And if you do these things, your economy is going to be in good shape, and your currency will too.
But we just spoke about the social projects and ADB's contribution to the country in this direction. So can you tell us, particularly in the education sector, so we have heard that ADB is financing some projects in this sphere as well.
I'm here actually working with my team on a regional forum for innovative strategies for supporting transition to a 12-year educational system. This was by request of the Minister of Education, and he actually opened the forum. The objective of this forum is to share knowledge and information from a wide variety of countries, from Canada, Australia, Dubai, Vietnam, Mongolia, about how they have done this, what's happened, what can be done about private education, what can be done about efficiency of using your budget more effectively when you're educating the population. I think it's very clear to me that the government and the people of the country want to improve their knowledge and understanding, want to innovate, want to be creative. And people understand that here, that if you want your economy to grow and develop and be sustainable, you have to do this. So we're excited about this option. This is grant funds to share knowledge and information, which is part of our responsibility as a knowledge bank. And it's part of the government's interests in terms of developing human resources in the country.
Do you think the project will greatly contribute to the development of human resources in the country?
That's the plan. Certainly we have been asked questions about public-private partnerships in education, about statistical information from other countries to compare and determine whether or not the government is efficient in using its financial resources in the education sector. Or maybe you need to spend more money. Maybe you just need to spend it differently. So a lot of this kind of analysis and information is provided to the government to help make better decisions.
You just mentioned about the sharing of experience in this field. So which country you think would be the better model for Azerbaijan to make an experience of, to exchange an experience in this field, do you think?
This is a really interesting question because it depends on the area. For example, we've just shared information on public-private partnerships from Vietnam. And for technical and vocational education development, it might be Austria or Germany. And for changeover to a 12-year education system, it might be the Philippines, or it might be Ontario, Canada.
So how do you decide which system goes where? Or is it better for, I mean, Azerbaijan now has the choice of all these countries you've just mentioned. How do you reach a decision that this is the best one for this country?
I think every country is unique. It's a challenge. Okay. So what you do is you say, what's the size of the country? What's its educational status? What's the economic situation of the country? What's the investment options? How do you match the circumstances of education with the circumstances of the labor market and the business opportunities for the country and its physical location? And you ask all those questions, then you say, who did something that was interesting in this regard? So, for example, in Ontario, Canada, they went from a 13-year program to a 12-year program. And in the process, they said, we have a high percentage of dropouts. People are not getting jobs when they leave school. What can we do about that? Interesting, isn't it? So then if you think about the circumstances of public-private partnerships, well, we brought a senior official from the government of the United Arab Emirates. And so Dubai is looking at private education as a really good solution for themselves. And now 60% of their population, the national population, goes to private school.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
You're welcome.
I think, therefore, we have international financial institutions who recommends us, who advises us, and who shows us the better way to survive these difficulties.
The only thought I can leave you with is I hope that they know what they're doing and they are building a better tomorrow.